Hello and welcome to Esri Australia's screen share video tutorial on how to navigate ArcGIS Online and its basic tools. ArcGIS Online is easy to navigate once you understand the basic function and location of the various mapping tools it offers. After logging in order to create a map, all you need to do is head up to the top banner and select the Map tab. And that will load a new map for you to be able to create. Now we're going to go through the functions of most of these tabs up on this top banner, and we're going to start from the right. The first one is our search bar, which works at a local and an international level, and everywhere in between. For instance, if I wanted to visit Europe, I could type in Europe and hit enter, and the map extent, or what is visible currently on our map, changes to include a snapshot of Europe. And you'll notice that this information box comes up. I can cross that off at any one time, but we have mainland Europe visible to us. That's an example of the search bar working at international levels. If I wanted to work at a really local level, I could type in an address and the search bar will take me there. For instance, I'll type in my place of work, which is Esri Australia's head office, 111 Elizabeth Street, and you'll notice that the search bar begins to self-populate. Now you'll notice that most of these, or all of these, are Elizabeth Streets in the United States of America, so I do need to go a little bit further with my search, and there we go. I've got the one that I want, so I click on that, and it takes me to a really local level, and tells me exactly what building 111 Elizabeth Street is, and I can cross that off. And if I really wanted to make sure that this was the right Elizabeth Street, the one that I was after, I could zoom out by using my scroll wheel on my mouse if I have one and go, yep, that's the Brisbane that I want. That's the Elizabeth Street that I want. I can zoom back in with my scroll wheel. Alternatively, if you're on a laptop and you don't have a mouse, you can use the minus and the plus functions to scroll in and out. Now, I want to zone back in on that Elizabeth Street one right here, and we're going to remember that it's this bottom corner of the street. And let's say I wanted to create a bookmark for this particular map extent. I want to save this map extent for later so that I could get there easily again without having to type in the address. I can click on bookmarks, add bookmark, and I'm going to create a title for this one, Esri Australia head office. And I'm going to hit enter and cross that off. And let's say I go back to Europe really quickly. It takes me far away. If I wanted to get back to 111 Elizabeth Street in Brisbane, I could click on bookmarks, Esri Australia head office, and it takes me straight back to that map extent. So that's really useful for when you're working with data and map layers at various levels, especially in various locations around the globe, or perhaps various scales, local to international. If I wanted to create more, I simply hit add bookmark to create another one. If I wanted to remove a bookmark, I click on the remove button, and if I want to edit the title, I can edit it by pressing the pencil icon. Bookmarks is really useful. The next one is our measurement tool. Our measurement tool can measure area, distance, or the location of something, and it gives you a range of measurement types. So if you're working in America, then perhaps yards and feet are more useful. However, if you're working in Australia, then kilometers, meters, etc. are going to be more relevant to you. Now, I can measure the area of any given shape by pressing the area button, making sure I clicked what type of measurement I want it to land in or push the result in, and I'm going to click square kilometers, and all I need to do is start on the map. Let's say I wanted to measure a rough rectangle of the Maya Center. I hit click, and every time I want to change directions I click once, and let's cut it a little bit short. I'm not going to go the whole way over. And on turns or curves, the more often you click around the curve, the more accurate your area is going to be. And when you're happy with the shape or you come back to your starting point, all you need to do is hit double click. and it gives you the area of that particular shape in square kilometers, or whatever you happen to choose. Now it's very similar when you go to use the distance tool. Okay, you set your measurement. I'm going to choose meters this time, and I want to know how far it is from this intersection to the top of the intersection here. And I can drag, and when I'm happy with that, I double click again to lock it in, and it gives me a result up the top. That's 214 meters. The area and distance tools I found can be particularly useful for maths related concepts and lessons, to teach things like distance equals speed over time, or whatever that particular equation happens to be. In a geographic sense, location measurement is really useful. I'm going to go back out to a national scale, Australia, and if I wanted to find the location in terms of coordinates, it gives you two options there. We're going to work in degrees. Then I can go to anywhere on this map, and you can notice that the latitude and the longitude is changing as I move it. Let's say I wanted to find the latitude and longitude of Perth. I double click to lock it in, and even though I'm moving my mouse, you can see that my coordinate results have locked in here. And the great thing about this is you can actually copy and paste these into an Excel spreadsheet if that's the direction that you want to go with it. This is particularly useful when working in developing countries like Africa, where we might not necessarily have access to street names, and you need to know the location of a particular village or something that has been affected by Ebola. So the measurement tool, and particularly this locational or coordinates-based measurement, is particularly useful for those instances. The next tool is our directions tool. It works very similar to Google Maps or Apple Maps. You can type in your starting place and your destination. You can type in how you want to get there. You might be walking, you might be driving, etc. And it will give you step-by-step directions as we make our way through. So for instance, if I start at 111 Elizabeth Street, Brisbane, and it will give me my options again, and I wanted to get to, let's go, you know what, I want to get to Sydney, New South Wales, Australia, and I'm going to drive, and I could hit click directions, and it gives me how long it's going to take in both hours or time and distance, and it gives me step-by-step directions as well to get there. And you'll notice that if I click on one, it actually shows that particular direction on the map too. So very similar to Google Maps and Apple Maps. Now we're going to skip these three middle tools for now. We're going to come back to them later. I want you to jump over to the left and click on the Details tab. And you notice that there are three sub-tabs that come up. And the first one, About, is a little bit of a reminder, especially if you're new, as to what steps you can go through to begin creating your map, from choosing an area, deciding what you want to show, adding more to your map, and saving and sharing your map. So a useful little, I guess, reminder for those starting out. The second sub-tab is Content tab, and this is where all of our map layers, our data layers, appear. Now, you'll notice that I've already uploaded one for us. That's the 2017 population in Africa's countries. At the moment, you'll notice that the checkbox is turned off, which means it wouldn't be visible. However, if I turn it on, it becomes visible. Now, we're focused in on Australia at the moment, but I can quite simply go to this More Options button and zoom to, and it will take me to that map layer's full extent. Alternatively, I could have scrolled out and dragged across the map to get to Africa, but that zoom to function makes it a lot quicker to get to places. And now that I am at Africa, I could create that extra bookmark and label it Africa so that I can get back there easily whenever I want. Now, You might be going, well, that's great, it looks like there's a bit of a choropleth map created, but what do those colours mean? That brings us to our third sub-tab, the legend. And it will tell you, okay, well, the darker the colour, or the darker the green in this case, the higher the population, and the lighter the colour, the more washed out that it becomes, the lower the population in those particular countries. The great thing about ArcGIS Online is that it's also interactive, so I can click on any country in here that there's data for, and it brings up this information box. And I can look down here at this last one, population 2017, and go, oh, the DRC had 81 and almost 500,000 people living there. So that's really great for wanting to know the exact numbers, because there's a big difference between 59 million and 81 million. And if I wasn't happy with those classes, I could create more classes to make more distinctions. But I'm not going to do that in this video. So that brings us back to the tabs up the top. And this one I'm not going to go into too much detail in this video. We can look at that closer in a following video, but this is where you add these map layers that I'm talking about. So it gives you a number of options. You can add simple map notes. You can add your own data from something like a CSV file. You can add layers or data from the web. There are a range of websites and sources out there that openly provide their data to the public. For instance, you might be able to see a couple up the top on my toolbar. National Map, I think the rest are hiding at the moment, World Bank, Our World in Data, etc. You can search for other map layers that other ArcGIS users have put onto ArcGIS Online and shared with everybody, shared with the public. So there's a range of opportunities to add different types of data and different types of maps. We're going to go into that particular tab in a lot more detail in a later video. The next one is our base map tab. Gives you the option to choose the base map you want to work with. For instance, what we see here is our topographic map, and this is the one I probably work with the most, because it gives you a general idea of land cover, for instance the greens versus the whites versus the blues, but it also strips back a lot of those extra pieces of information that might not be relevant. For instance, you can only really see the titles or the names of the countries and the major oceans right here, the Caribbean Sea, the Arabian Sea, whereas by choosing different base maps, different features come up. For instance, if I was working with terrain in particular, well then maybe the terrain map is more suitable to what I'm after, and you can see here the Himalayan mountain ranges appear quite prominently on this particular map or base map. Another one that I frequently work with is the dark grey or the light grey canvases. Why? Because these particular map extents really make your data pop. These greens, these washed out tones, are a lot more visible on this really simple canvas map type. And yes, if I scroll in, I can still see those major details, for instance capital cities, but it doesn't detract from my data or my map layer here. And it really depends on what map layers you are using as well. I do find most of the time that topographic is the most useful for what I'm doing. Another one that is also very popular is our imagery one. At the moment it looks like something you would see from Google Earth, and you can see my map layer over the top. However, if I was to zoom really far in, and it might take some time to load sometimes because it is dealing with imagery, satellite imagery, but you get a really clear picture of the land cover and how that land is being used. And the further you go in, the more detailed it gets. As you can see, we had some clouds before, now we can actually start to make out a little bit of a settlement in Indonesia, and scroll right in, I can see individual houses as well. So base maps, there's a range there, and you need to decide what's best for the data or the map layers that you're trying to show. I'm going to turn mine back to topographic, and I'm going to click on bookmarks and click Africa to bring it back out to my data layer. The analysis function is perhaps the most complex function on this banner of tools, and we're going to leave that as well for a later video, because you need to know how to do this properly before you can start to use the analysis tool. That brings us to our middle three, and then we will close. So it's really important that as you are working on in an online format on ArcGIS Online, that you save your work frequently, because if you were to have an internet cutout or a connection loss, then that means you're going to lose whatever work was unsaved. So it's really important to save frequently, and you can hit save, and it prompts you to create a title, Africa's population, and you can add tags and a description. Notice that you won't be able to save your map unless you create a tag. So you need to just chuck in some generic tabs. I'm going to go Africa, comma, population, and that will do. And you hit enter and it creates two tags for them. The description or the summary of your map is optional, and once you're happy with it, you can actually choose where you want to save it. If I was perhaps doing this for Year 7 Geography, I'd save it in my Year 7 Geography folder. And then you hit Save Map. And then every single time after that, you won't have to hit Save As necessarily, you can just hit Save really quickly to update that save. In order to hit Share, you must have first saved it. So, my apologies, I perhaps should save this one. I'll have to delete it later. Africa's, population. And I'm going to hit Save. Now, in order to share, you must have first saved the map. And it will give you, once you hit Share, some options for what level of sharing you want this map to be seen by. If I click everyone, then it automatically clicks GIS for schools, which is my school organization account. However, if I didn't want everybody to see it and I just want the students in my school to see it, then I don't need to click everyone. I might just click the GIS for schools, which means that only my school students can see this. Now this is coming up as well, and I'll explain why. The particular map layer that I added hasn't been shared with GIS for schools or everyone. Currently, this map layer is private, which means that it's going to give me this warning. I can share the map, sure, but if I haven't updated this feature layer, this map layer, then when people open this map, they won't be able to see that data. So it gives you this warning that you need to update the sharing level of your map layers too. And then there's the link to your map, and you can control and paste that into an email and send it to your students if you had created a map that you wanted them to work on for a lesson, for instance. And then you hit done once you're happy with your levels of sharing. And this brings us to our last one, which is print, and it's fairly self-explanatory. However, I really want to point out this option too. Now if you click print and click map, then it's going to just print this portion of the map. However, if you click print map with legend, then it's going to include this on the side of your map, which is really useful for if you were including this in something like a PowerPoint presentation or a story map, or perhaps an assessment piece if you're a student. And it takes a little while to load, but when it does, you'll notice that we already have our legend off to the side, and what we'll see in a second is our map and the data layer over the top of the map. And there you go. Now this becomes non-interactive once it essentially has just created a screenshot of your map and added the legend to the side. Now you might have to play around with where your data is sitting, because sometimes if it's over here and I was to go and print map with legend, then what you will see here is that it's cut half of Africa off. So really the goal is to make sure that your data, or what you're wanting to show, is nice and central, so that it appears nice and central in your print with legend. Now in summing up, we've gone through the main basic functions and tools associated with ArcGIS Online. You should now have a basic idea of how to navigate ArcGIS Online successfully, and if you're looking to learn more about this Add tab or the Analysis function, please visit the later videos that will be created and published on our website. Thank you.